I want to welcome everybody to today's webinar. I'm Ryan Fisher with CamaPlan. I encourage everybody to take a look at our website at camaplan.com, CAMAPLAN.com. Any questions regarding self-directed IRAs, I can be reached through the website as well, or at 215-283-2860, and there's also a contact us here. You can fill out and set up a time. Just want to point out too to anybody who's new, our office has moved. We are in Ambler. You're welcome if you're in the area to stop by the office. And I want to welcome David and Jeremy to today's webinar. Thanks for being here with us, guys.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, David, right now.
Great.
And that should pop that up for you guys. While it's switching over there. Okay, great. I see it. Why don't you, Jeremy and David, give us a little brief introduction of what you guys are doing, investing in residential real estate in Brewerytown in Philadelphia.
Sure. Dave, you want to kick off the intro about Argo and some of the stuff we're up to?
Sure. Hey, everybody. First, thanks for signing in today and taking some time to listen to us. We're Argo Property Group. Our team is 3 people as partners for a couple of years now, and then we've since added to our team. It's myself, David Ross, Jeremy Terra on the phone, and Troy Sheets, who's out in the field right now, and trying to find a full screen here. And then we also have Justin, who's an associate. He's on the line to help answer questions, and Ronit is also our company controller. So we've been a team for over 3 years now in Philadelphia. We started with some small single-family rehabs and flips, and then we slowly worked into multifamily buildings, and now we're working on some mixed-use properties for this year. We have over 35 current and upcoming projects that are either underway or I'm working with the architecture on the city for, and that's over 150 residential units. Some of those are single-family houses, some are big apartments, and that ends up being over 150,000 square feet of building area. So if you're familiar with Philadelphia, I zoomed in on the map here of the neighborhood we're focused in. This is right behind the Art Museum and just to the east of the Schuylkill River and Kelly Drive.
Great, thanks. So you have a pretty impressive resume in real estate development. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about how you got there and your career path?
Sure. Jeremy, I'll go first.
Okay.
I grew up on construction. My dad's a carpenter and plumber, and I grew up in central Pennsylvania and was doing that most of my life. And the economy isn't really booming up there, so I went to school for software and computer design and worked professionally as a user experience designer for a couple different professional firms for about 10 years, but really just missed real estate construction development. And about 6 years ago, I pursued my master's in sustainable design, which is like a green building focused program at Philadelphia University, which is now Jefferson University. And that really introduced me to integrative design processes and construction management. And it really prompted me to get back into development and the built environment. So a couple years ago, I started, finding ways to put that into action. I met Troy, and we hit it off and decided to do a project together. And then shortly thereafter, we met Jeremy. And that really allowed us to grow exponentially.
Awesome, that's great. Did you want to also chime in there, Jeremy?
Sure. So I come from more of a risk management background. Up until very recently, was director of global risk management at GlaxoSmithKline. I had a couple of rental properties and quickly learned that being a property manager was just not my thing. So historically, I've worked in international development in various countries around the world doing urban planning projects and institutional development, restructuring of governments and different companies, strategic planning. And this is a segue from that, just the opportunity to rapidly grow and scale a business. So it's been really a fantastic ride. And from a risk manager's perspective, it's just been fantastic in the sense that every single day you're exposed to so many new and interesting ways of dealing with the risks as they arise from all the lessons we've learned in the building mechanics to the finance, to administration, across the board. For me, the Argo experience has been very much, the growth of risk ownership it's been very good. And then Troy, do you want to share just a quick snapshot of our boots on the ground guy, Troy Sheets, David, if you don't mind?
Sure. Troy's been doing construction management or property management for over 20 years now. He was heading up some operation crews at large electric facilities before we connected a few years ago. So he is the one out making sure that all the job sites are running smoothly, calls it like it is, and is very effective.
Great. So tell us a little bit more about your company, Argo, and what it really is that you guys actually are doing.
So we are a real estate design, development, and management company, and we're building Brewerytown. And the way that we're doing that, and just take a step back for a moment, Brewerytown is in Philadelphia, and it's in this really cool spot in Philadelphia because on the west side, directly on the west of Brewerytown, you have like Fairmount Park, which is beautiful, green and spacious area for running and trails. And playgrounds. David and I both see our kids into the playgrounds in that area. And then directly to the south of it is the art museum and Fairmount area, stone's throw from the Rocky statue there. And then to the east you have universities, Temple University and whatnot, and a few others. So it's a really cool little niche area. And we've concentrated all of our efforts over the last 3 years in about 5 blocks of development. And by concentrating in that area, we've gotten to really know every single type of development opportunity. So we've Argo Property Group has started to get into residential single-family homes, and then multifamily developments, and now into mixed use. And what we like to think of as we're sort of the private sector urban developers working within the community to try and understand, well, what are the needs of a rapidly redeveloping neighborhood. So I'd say overall that when people ask, what is the mission or vision of Argo, that's really what it is to continue the pace of redevelopment within Brewerytown in a way that makes most sense for that neighborhood. Now, we've organized our development into 4 clusters, and David, if you want to just give some overview of that, they have some really cool pictures. Just give people an idea of, what is a little bit more about real estate development. What does it look like? And what are some things that developers do?
Yeah, so a lot of this is once you have 1 or 2 projects, you realize it benefits you to improve the whole block and see if you can get the property next door and make larger change in a certain area. So this is what we've done, and there's 4 different blocks where we've really focused on this. The first one was kind of our first cluster that evolved, and we had 7 different parcels on the same 1200 block on North 27th Street, Philadelphia. The gaps between the buildings there are city-owned parcels that we've been unable to acquire, but eventually something will fall into there. But this is 20 different residential units. They're all multifamily buildings, and these are all complete and occupied. And this is located right at the intersection of 27th and Girard Avenue. So there's a trolley line that runs at the corner. There's multiple bus routes that go right past here. So it does work for a very transit-oriented tenant.
Awesome.
And
Go ahead.
from a developer or from someone who's not in the development world, it's really interesting because, as David said, there's 7 parcels that were redeveloped here, but it wasn't like you just go shop for them. Like most of the stuff that happens in real estate development is it's not on the MLS. You know, you don't go out, you don't buy, you don't find it. You have to use a whole network of wholesalers, realtors. You have to, you know, try and find the owners. In Philadelphia, there's a lot of people who families have had property pass through to multiple generations. They're not even aware of it. There's sheriff sales. So there's this whole mix of ways that we, even in this one small development, had to track down the individual parcels of land. And that's it's really interesting. You learn about families and areas, but it's also you know, rife with all sorts of risks and challenges. If you buy a sheriff sale property, you know, you and a lot of people do that. They go to the sheriff sale, they get a great deal on a piece of property, but you may not know the liens that are there, like the hidden liens that you'll end up paying as the new owner. Nothing is easy. If it were easy, everyone would do it. This is I think that one of the biggest accomplishments in this, it not even is just in the construction of it, but it is in the tracking down the buying of each of the individual pieces of land and the asset or the lots. And that's one of our, I'd say that defines one thing that Argo focuses on. Instead of one-offs, we really try and build the block approach. It de-risks the environment. The more control you can exert over the situation.
Wow, you seem really excited about Brewerytown there. What makes you so passionate about this business and, you know, this area of Philadelphia?
I mean, I'll take that. I mean, yeah, sorry. I live here. You know, first projects we acquired were a block and a half from my house. You know, so they say, you know, you don't need to chase greener pastures. You can do this in your own backyard. So Troy and I both live in the neighborhood, and we had a passion for doing this, and just really just wanted to improve the areas that were underdeveloped that were very close to our homes. So it just makes a lot of sense, and also it's very convenient to be able to roll out of your house and get to the job site in a matter of minutes, and it makes it easier for off-hour stuff as well.
Awesome. Do you have any competitors there?
Yeah, there's competitors of all size. There's hundreds of small teams and investors that are getting off the sidelines over the past 2 or 3 years and doing 1, 2, 3, 4 projects. There's some other teams that have been here for 10, 15 years that are a lot larger than us that are doing some large commercial redevelopment of like 100+ unit buildings. Us in the middle of the market, you know, I would say we're a mid-sized developer. We probably have about a half a dozen peers, but we seem to have organized our clusters a little bit better so that we kind of come out with a big bang on certain blocks, where some of the other guys we know have more of a shotgun scattershot approach. So same amount of projects, but they're running all over the place a little bit more. So that's been one thing.
So what would you say would be one of the biggest things that separates you and your projects from them?
It's hard to say. I mean, we have a very good working relationship with most of the other guys in the neighborhood. You have to have a good camaraderie with everyone because you never know when you'll need it. The one thing we focus on more than them is really concentrating our assets on different blocks. Because it gives us that big picture, long-term improvement where, you know, what something looks like on a pro forma today is very different knowing, you know, what the whole block is going to be a year from now. So that's the value add that we've had for some of these blocks, and the blocks that we focused have a completely invigorated feel to them. So that's what I think we offer that a lot of other guys don't focus on.
Awesome. So we can step a little bit more into that. What do you really think it is that makes your project so successful?
Well, I think that we spend an extra amount of time slowing down our design process. We work with some good architects, and you're also dealing with Philadelphia parcels. And if you're not from Philadelphia, most of the pieces of land here are 14 to 16 feet wide. So you're very limited in the box that you can drop on these pieces of land. So you have to be very careful about designing something that is modern, but will also stand the test of time. And we have more of a contemporary look. It's clean, and our quality of finishes is above market rate for the neighborhood. So we don't mind spending extra on our interiors because it's the one thing that helps set us apart. And it just makes it easier on the out sales.
Great. Well, risk is really important to me, and I assume our audience as well. How do you guys mitigate that?
So I think David said it pretty well, which is to slow everything down. So identify where the risks are along the value stream. From acquisition, we operate more like a company, like a corporation, than like a flipper or something. So we're rapidly scaling this business so that we have that capacity. So from the acquisitions, as I said earlier, you have to make sure that you know what you're buying. Are there any liens? Those are some of the biggest risks there. You could end up with a water lien that could be $30,000, $40,000 for a lot of these properties that haven't been serviced or haven't been owned rather for 40 years since the 70s. Then once you go through from acquisition, the next big milestone for risk is the use of the property. So between the time of acquisition to the time when you have your building permits, that's the next big hurdle, is working within the city to get the building permit. Some things that can happen there is, when we experience this, the city councilman can decide that they want to either downzone or upzone something. If it's downzone, like the properties that David shared with you earlier, the 20-unit multifamily, that was downzoned from being able to do multifamily, which means like, a triplex, duplex, 6 units, whatever it is, to being single family. So the economics of a project, when you buy the land for $90,000 or $100,000 or $150,000 or whatever it is you're paying for it, are very different if you're going to build only one residence versus a triplex. That's an example of a risk between buying the property and then getting the building permit, is the zoning changes. And then once you get from the building permit to a development, some of the challenges you face are financing. So your pro forma, when you finance a project with hard money, it looks very different when you finance it with conventional lending. When you need to raise capital, when you raise the capital from experienced real estate developers versus when you are working with investors who are accredited and each of those paths offer different benefits, different pros and cons. Then when you're in development, so now you have the project purchase, you have the building permits, you're shovel ready, then the next part is engaging the general contractor. So initially, we used other general contractors to build our work, and then we found that it wasn't necessarily going fast enough, or the quality didn't meet our expectations, so we had to become the general contractor. We became a fully vertically integrated organization, except for we're not our own realtor, we don't sell our own things. So that's a major risk, that your contractor just walks off the job. You hear it all the time. They were paid and then they just leave. They disappear with the money to go out and find another general contractor. And it's hard to get someone to start on a job that's already started because they don't want to deal with the mistakes that are left behind. So even after the project is completed, so construction is now finished, you, as a developer, then carry the risk for a year. So if it's a new construction home or an apartment building, or you're selling it, or you're keeping it, once you're the developer, you're carrying at least a part of that warranty for the product for a year. And as these houses settle, you have drywall cracks, the mortar in the bathroom. So that's the next layer of risk. So throughout, and then even, it could go further on afterwards. Last thing I say is about management. So you have this great asset, you're taking a piece of land that maybe was $100,000, you put a triplex on it, and now it's an $850,000 asset. And now you want to manage the asset. You want to get as much cash flow out of it as you can, and you want to make sure that it doesn't degrade because of tenants or lack of maintenance, deferred maintenance, things like that. So we've again found that nothing against property managers, great business, lots of great people do it, it's wonderful, but it doesn't, so far we've not found that there's like a secret sauce to it. So everyone kind of like does it miserably equally. So we've internalized a lot of the property management duties to manage the assets. And as the owners, you're going to spend a little more than you might, or pay a little more attention than you might if you were the outsourced company. So throughout every stage of this development, we have used risk to make our decisions, and we have used risk to determine what our outstanding capital requirements are to carry the projects, not even through completion, but that year afterwards too. And I think that's what separates Argo. And Dave did a great job of saying that our ability to pull together these development clusters is pivotal for us. And that certainly does separate us from others at our scale. We're not an institutional development level, but at our scale, it certainly separates us. But one of the other aspects is this kind of focusing on the risk management, where we look at the full value chain and say, like, well, where are the breakdowns going to be? And we indemnify ourselves against it with whatever insurance we need to, or holding back a reserve. So this is not for the the faint of heart. Everything that can possibly go wrong can go wrong at some point, and you have to know the downside. And that's one area where we have fortunately protect ourselves quite well across the board. You have your lawyers, you have your accountants, you have your insurance brokers, you have all of these different people that are critical to your team, and I think that's been quite a differentiator for us.
Awesome. So what does the risk look like to an investor investing in your company?
So the risk to an investor investing in the company is uncertainty at every one of those handoffs. So depending on when and again, that's because we're a deep value add company. But we go into a project, we're either tearing it down to the ground or building up new construction for the most part. So on the one hand, there's less risk because you don't know there's no skeletons in this closet because you tore all the closets out. On the other hand, there's more risk because the value you're adding into the asset is going to be so substantial that at the end, you're going to end up with an asset that's worth 25, 30 plus % more than the total of cost that went in to build the asset. So for investors, for ourselves, the owners, developers, that's the model we try to replicate, which is deep value add. At the end of it, you should be what they call refinance cash out if it's a long-term like rental building. So you've added so much value that the total cost is 65 or 70% of the total value, and you can pull back your full capital contribution. So that's great, and it works very well. But along the way to get there, there is that risk at every single focal point. And I think when investors get into real estate, why they love it is because it's tactile and you can see it. And I know from my day job, I was doing PowerPoint presentations all the time, and I just wanted something that I could touch, that I could feel, that I could say that leaving a legacy. And that's what this definitely is. But it is important to be cognizant of both the risks and actively manage whoever you're working with. Do you have contracts in place? Did you get quotes? Do you have an operating agreement that says what happens if more capital is needed for the project? Things change. The cost of wood goes up 10%. It's a housing boom and the prices are appreciating, but guess what? So is the demand on labor. So all of your subcontractors and your major trades are more expensive. So, making sure as an investor that you have a clear understanding of what is in the operating agreement that I'm signing, what is my level of control to have decision making on financial decisions. So, is there a threshold set there? Is there a role for me to expose myself to the cash risk or to the loan as well? And then lastly, what is the long-term plan? And if I feel that I want to exit from the project, how can I get out of the project? So knowing all that going in as an investor is very important for deep value-add projects, especially. For the stabilized projects, the benefit is you're looking at actual rents, and your analysis is pretty straightforward. The downside being that you're not seeing much growth from the capital that you've invested. It's a long-term game to recoup that initial capital contribution. So the pros and cons to the type of real estate investment that you're making, whether it's deep value add or the stabilized real estate investment.
Great, thanks. So can anybody invest in your company, and is there an opportunity to invest and make money working with you guys?
So the answer is, if you're an accredited, I'm trying to read from the script that our lawyers gave us. If you're an accredited investor, then you can participate in Argo Property Group's various development activities. In general, we look at building relationships as either lenders to the company or equity, like joint venture equity partners, or something in between those two. We do a lot of due diligence on the individuals to make sure that our values are the same. Real estate is it can be a very gray area. So we want to protect ourselves from working with individuals that don't share the same adherence to like compliance and audit and ethics and controls that we do as a company. But absolutely, if we're to be giving you a straight answer, we've done very well in the past. We've fortunately not lost any money on any investments to date. The market has been very generous. And some of our partners have been well into the double digits on their returns, which is great for the risks that they're taking. And yes, we're continuing to develop real estate in Brewerytown.
Awesome. Do you think this is a good investment for a self-directed plan?
Self-directed IRA funds are a great way to get involved in real estate investing. I certainly think so. It's important that those investors understand the tax implications for any gains and how that can impact their self-directed IRA account. And it's also important to understand for investors, some banks won't do loans with self-directed IRAs, and there are other limitations. But overall, across the real estate development and real estate investment arena, there's a huge way to diversify people's investment portfolios. They generally, I think this is, hopefully everyone on the call would agree with this. I generally, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, but those who do invest in real estate find it to be a very fruitful diversification to their investment strategy.
Awesome, thanks. I was just looking at, I was trying to get it. Let me just read you a question here. Oh, it's not coming big. Has revitalization caused displacement and concern from the community that could negatively impact the projects?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll answer this, and then I'll let David answer it too. So I live in Ballackinman, which is about 5 or 10 minutes away from our project sites, and then everybody else on our team lives in Brewerytown, which is a big part of our development strategy. If you live where you work, you have excellent work-life balance, and you also care more about the impact of your activities in the local community. But I just want to answer it from a risk perspective. So reputational risk is enormous. We've seen the impact of public companies when there's degradation of the reputation of the company and the credibility and the confidence goes down. That has a direct impact on the share price activity, referring to studies. And that's the same thing with private companies too. So we've taken the position that revitalization, some people have used the word gentrification, impacts different people different ways. And not everybody is positively benefited by our development activities. You take a block like 28th Street in Brewerytown, where we are putting up ourselves or with other partners up to 10 houses on a block that was formerly all vacant land. It's not good for the families. It's not good for the kids in the area. It's not good for anybody. All of this whole side of the street was fully vacant. We're not going to, get an award from the city or the neighborhood for putting houses and redeveloping the area. But we do believe that that's a better outcome than vacant land for everybody across the board. However, along the way, the rapid appreciation of prices makes rents go up, makes an opportunity for people who are not, who don't necessarily share the same values that we do, go after long-standing homeowners with requests to buy their homes in ways that may or may not be, nice ways to go about doing business. So Argo Property Group, much in line with our deep value add focus, we go after properties that are vacant land or abandoned homes that are like missing a whole wall, or there's no roof. So there's no one living there. I think we have maybe 1 or 2 properties out of everything we've acquired where there was an inhabitant across the board. We're going after these properties where we're not kicking people out and doing things like that tend to be the source of the frustration with backlash against developers. The other thing that we're not doing, and there are pros and cons to this, is advertising. So in a rapidly developing area, revitalizing area, you'll often see signs and banners from developers, and those are really great. They generate opportunities for people to become new investors, for people who want to sell their homes to contact those developers, for home buyers to contact them, for new tenants to contact them for the rental buildings. But it also sends a signal that it can send a signal that the perception of the developer is that all people are impacted by development in the same way, and it's to be promoted. So historically and going into the future, we'll continue to take more of a subtle approach, where it's our job, it's what pays the bills, it's what we do as development, but we're fully cognizant that not everybody may be thrilled about that. And we try to approach our neighborhood and our area with respect and appreciation for how everyone is impacted differently by the experience of a development. So that's my soapbox speech. I'll pass it over to David and share what it's like living there in your homes.
Yeah, this is a tough question, because I feel like a lot of neighborhoods that are going through transition have the same issues, where people that are moving in and can afford the new buildings are often displacing those that have been living multi-generational in a home, and a lot of renters on the blocks. So like Jeremy said, being aware of that, trying to focus our efforts where there's vacant land and where there's not pre-existing tenants has been helpful thus far. We're lucky that we're in an area of Philadelphia that there is land available. It's scattered, but we haven't had to have those hard conversations with ourselves or with the neighborhood about, what is the greater good here. For the most part, we've been able to do our work and try and hire locally. Most of our labor is from within the neighborhood or nearby. Most all of them are minority and from many different backgrounds, and it just helps because to have a local workforce is great for your reputation, but also because they'll show up and work different days of the week, and they're always looking for more work. So it's just a relationship we have here. And also walking down the street, it helps us have a little peace of mind with knowing that people aren't going to be accusing us and shouting insults at us. So, like Jeremy said, we're going to be cognizant of it as we grow, but it's always going to be a delicate balance.
Great. And I know we've run over here on time, but let me just ask another question from the chat box. But if you can you put your information up so people can contact you directly with any other questions that they may have? All right, great. So the question was, what is the minimum level of investment required as a lender to Argo for development projects?
So it varies. Anyone who is an accountant or has ever dealt with an accountant knows that answer, and that really is the answer. So it varies. Getting involved with Argo can mean a lot of different things, and from a financial perspective, lending money to Argo can mean a lot of different things too. It can be a collateralized loan where you're talking about. We do a lot, for example, we do a lot of bridge loans where from the point of acquisition through permitting, during that risky stage, we will go with a higher cost bridge loan until we've stabilized the project with that permit in hand. And then we'll bring in investors to join us to take it with the conventional lender at a much lower cost of capital to do the development project. So that's an example of a lending relationship. Other examples might be, in different ways. So it really depends on the appetite for the particular investor, whether they are more or less risk averse, and more or interested in different levels of return. So there's no one right answer, unfortunately, to that question, other than if you do make investments into real estate, it is always important to do the right level of diligence. And we're happy to share our experiences in that regard.
Great. Thanks a lot. Well, we're out of time today. I want to thank both you, Jeremy and David, for taking the time to discuss this with us about investing in Brewerytown. Appreciate your time, and the contact information's up there for anybody who would like to have other questions answered. Another one just came in though. I guess, how do you deal with liquidity for investors in stabilized projects?
So we can't address the liquidity of the investor themselves, other than to work with us, you need to be an accredited investor, and we also try to understand or try to assure that someone's not betting the farm in one particular investment, or if they are, at least it's not with us. So maybe that's not the liquidity question. So for each of our projects, it's a very important treasury management perspective. So we work with our accountant to understand what are the total capital needs for the projects, and how, sources and uses, and how much of that is going to come from debt, and how much is going to have to come from equity. And we hold in the company account the amount that needs to be from equity, because you may have the amount that's required, let's say, to start the project in construction, But along the way, you need to be able to support the interest payments, the tax payments, the accounting fees, the just all the various different types of holding costs, in addition to contingencies. So that's mainly how we manage the capital requirement, is from the outset of the project. We determine what the expected pro forma is, and then that tells us the total capital raise for any different type of projects. We conduct a sensitivity analysis to determine how much of that can be debt versus equity. And then we raise it accordingly, the debt and the equity accordingly. The other thing that we do, which I think is pretty common, at least I think it's a pretty good practice, it costs a little bit more from a legal and accounting perspective, but it saves you in the long run, is everything we do is in SPEs, so it's single purpose entities. So you have one bank account per project, and one set of financial statements, so your balance sheet and profit and loss statement per project. So at any given time, you know the capitalization of the project because everything is in the bank account for that specific project, and you know the financials because it's all reported for that specific project. So there's some tricks to the trade, which are also good kind of risk measures that we found helpful to make sure all of the projects are capitalized at any given time. That being said, it's important for investors to keep in mind that markets can change. The bank's liquidity position can change. A lot of different factors can change, and those can impact you individually in the project financials as well.
Appreciate you taking the time to answer that. Well, again, if we're out of time, feel free to reach out to the contact information in front of you. And if there's anything I can do to help anybody, you're welcome to contact me at rfischer, RFISCHER at CamaPlan.com. Thanks for being on with us today, guys.
Thanks, Ryan. We really enjoyed it.
You're welcome. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for attending.